Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the garage for yet another meeting with me, Andy the Gabby Cabby. Good to see everybody in the house. Hope you're doing okay. And I see we've got bags and bags of attention already, looking at a load of the comments. Hopefully tonight we'll go without any problems, because those of you that joined me on the live stream, I think it was last night or the night before, it all went terribly wrong, terribly quickly. So hopefully I've got to the bottom of why that happened. Now, hello to everybody. As I say, there is loads in the chat, and I'll come to your comments over the course of the live stream. There's a lot to go through, so I want to get cracking. Now, the title of this live stream is "Couldn't They Sack Him?" and Rupert Lowe, the latest. Now, can they sack him? I'm referring to Zia Yusuf, because there's been a lot of comments that I've seen on the channel today, and also over on my X account. By the way, if you're on X, go and follow me over there, because I get some information across and I can speak a little bit more freely than you can on this platform, which can be a wonderful thing. So back to it. Can you sack Zia Yusuf? And I thought, well, it's homework I'd already done, and I wanted to bring to you the results of that homework. And you can all see and all learn exactly what I have, and you can make your own minds up. Now, to set the scene, anybody in the house that's ever run a company in their life, run a limited company, will know or have a rough idea in the UK how it all works. Me personally, I'm a director of 2 limited companies for my business interests. It's the way it is. Now, we all know, and it's published fact, that the Reform Party are a limited company. And if I bring this up on the screen right now, you can see the details there, and all of this, it's nothing new. It is publicly available within Companies House, and you can see incorporated on the 23rd of November 2018, PLC with the registered business address and everything else on there. Now, when you have a limited company, you have directors. In the old days, you had secretaries. You had to have a company secretary as well, and I'm not so sure that that's the case anymore with that. But what we're concentrating on is who has significant control of the party at this point in time, because we've seen all the fluff and everything in the news, haven't we? Now, if we have a look at this screen here, you can see Mr. Nigel Farage, Mr. Richard James Tice. Now, this is the only stuff that I could fit on the screen. It's a very big list of all of the directors, either past or present, of Reform UK, the actual limited company. And you can see here, Nigel and Richard Tice have both ceased to have any kind of significant control, which goes along with the news narrative. That's what they've said in the news. Now, when you're a person of significant control, you have a right to appoint or remove directors, and you own a certain amount of shares of the company. Now, to give you an example, in my case, my wife and I are both directors of the companies that I'm a director of, and we're a 50-50 split. The thing is, if anything were to happen to me, then my wife needs some kind of guarantee or some security that everything would go on regardless. So that's the way we've got it set up, and we both have significant control over our company. Now, we have a look at this here. This is the significant control panel, again, at Companies House. It's all publicly viewable information. If you know where to look, you can simply Google it, you can see Reform UK Party Limited. One active person with significant control is a company called Reform 2025 Limited. And again, we know that that company has been formed fairly recently. And just to be clear, when you have a limited company, a person or another company can be an entity or person of significant control. I ran a business years ago, and the firm that provided the company secretary facility for me was another company. So they were added as a person with significant control. That's how it works. Now, remember the previous screen where Farage and Tice and all the others no longer have significant control over Reform UK Party Limited. So let's take this out. And let's dig a little bit deeper into Reform 2025. There we go. Reform 2025. You can see when it was incorporated, 18th February 2025. First accounts made up to 2026. First statement 17th of February, due by the 3rd of March 2026. Now, the company type here is private company limited by guarantee without share capital. Mostly were limited companies, and it's a bit of a thing to get your head around. Shares or nominal shares are usually issued to the directors and people with significant control over the company. But the other way of doing it, the other model of doing it is by guarantee rather than shares, which basically means, or one of the key differences is if anything happens to that company, the directors are somewhat more responsible than they would be otherwise. Limited by guarantee, the clue is in the name. Now, if we have a look at the directors for said company, look here. This is off the directors panel of Reform 2025. The only two directors of Reform 2025 are Nigel Farage and Mohammed Zia Yusuf. They're the only two. Now, with Reform 2025, no one has significant control, I'm assuming, because it's limited by guarantee rather than by shares. But they're directors of this company, Reform 2025. And if we hop back across to the actual Reform Party Limited company, this company has significant control. So by proxy, I would argue that Zia Yusuf and Nigel Farage are very much in control of the Reform Party still, no matter what you say in the news. Now, the point remains here, can you or could you sack Zia Yusuf? The fact that he's a director of a company that has significant control over the Reform Party, I would argue that you probably could get rid of him, but it would cost a great deal of money to do so. So you have to wonder how the hell we've ended up in this situation in the first place. It's a bit of a deep pond, isn't it? And I'm sure you could probably go further still, but that didn't take me a lot of working out, purely because I know what I'm looking for, purely by nature of what I do. Yeah, find your way band, depends who owns the shares. That's very much a good point. But, you know, there's an element of truth and an element of untruth in what's going on there. So you have to work it out. But to answer the question and what people have said repeatedly, could you sack him? I think it'd be a very costly exercise. Now, I'm going to have a look at a few of the comments and then we'll go to the latest with Rupert. Mutarim, our country is being sold to the highest bidder. How many white British are leaders of major parties, mayors, MPs in Asia or the Middle East? None. WEF and G. I can't argue with that. I mean, this is the other thing as well. Some people on X today have told me that Zia Yusuf is WEF, W-E-F. I had a look into it, and there is actually another individual called Zia Yusuf who works for a company that's affiliated or had something to do with WEF, and completely different individuals. So I think there's a little bit of confusion there. Right, next one. Mike Smith, wait and see if the allegations are true. The only reason that Zia is chairman is to get extra votes from you-know-who. Stick together, people, or you can pick one of the two parties. That's a valid point, Mike, because, I mean, this subject, this situation is heavily trending in the news. It's all over the place. And if we're not careful, it's just going to blow the whole thing apart. Absolutely blow the whole thing apart. It's a poor show. It should have been done behind closed doors. None of this should have been out in the public. It really is a shower of shit. And you have to wonder, why did it get this far? How did it get this far? But it's a very valid point. And if we're not careful, we could end up with more of the same, which we've been used to all this time. Phil Corbett Butler, rather. Shame I can't get my membership, or I should say subscription money, back in protest. It's not just about Lowe and Habib. It's the hundreds of grassroots campaigners that uplifted reform that got ditched. This is who we're forgetting, isn't it? You've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people throughout the country who wanted political change, all of them. They wanted something different to happen, and they've thrown their lot in with reform. I interviewed two of them on the channel. Last weekend just gone. It came out on Sunday. I saw the results. They didn't win, but they came second and third. Very, very good showing for a new party, although the media will jump all over that. Phil, yep. For some reason, my starred comments aren't disappearing. We'll have a couple more and then we'll go back to what Rupert has to say. Farage is like YouTube. Mustn't upset them, but take the knee and be yes men, or else out the door you go. Balls to that BS. He said, Farage, and the rough quote was, it was an attack. It was a political attack. Well, no, it wasn't. I would put it as constructive critique. I believe that this should happen. Nobody in any position of authority should be immune from criticism of any kind. Farage should be no less than that, I'm afraid. And the fact it's gone public is very, very damaging. And I hope they can put the lid on it. I really do. Michael. Yep. Again, my starred comments aren't disappearing. I will get the hang of this sooner or later. English Folker, they need to find a way of removing Zia, build bridges with Rupert, Ben and Howard Cox. That's where it's all fallen down, isn't it? I mean, I saw an article earlier on where they had a picture of Farage and they were referring to the radical right. Now, is this the media or is this something he said? He seems to be wanting to go after the middle ground, the centre-right voters, the middle classes. And there are literally millions of people in this country who feel disenfranchised, pissed off, fed up, and don't know which way to turn. And for thousands of them, reform is their last hope. And with all this going on in the press, everywhere else, it's not a good showing, is it? And people are going to think, well, why bother? And then they'll go back to Tory, they'll go back to Labour. And you look at the complete and utter balls up Labour are making of our once great country at the moment. It's only going to get worse. So this needs putting to bed really, really quickly. Okay, one more. The WEF worm has to go with RT, etc. Reform is sabotaging itself, which is nothing new. With NF, he has form for doing this. I'll tell you a couple of stories about Nigel. 2015, he was all over the South Thanet seat. South Thanet is where I live. There's no such thing as South Thanet anymore. All the boundary lines have been withdrawn. And he wanted to get in here under the UKIP banner. The Conservatives won. They threw everything in the kitchen sink at it. Shortly after, He left UKIP, wanted his life back, I think the quote was. Downhill it went. Then we get the referendum on Brexit. The Brexit Party comes by. And again, candidates throughout the land, including one locally that I got on quite well with. And a lot of them, including the local one here, got stood down in a deal with Boris to get Brexit over the line. Now, let's face it, it's been a complete cock-up. What did Farage do after that? He disappeared. Then along comes reform. The name, the clue is in the name, reform. We want to reform our government. We want to reform the way things are run. We want to reform our country, the last great hope. Now look where we are once again. Is this media? Is this Farage? What we've got to determine, and I did a poll. I said, if Farage buggered off tomorrow, would you still vote reform? And many, many, many thousands of people said, yes, we would. It's all about reform. What is reform to you? Is it the people in it? Is it Nigel Farage? Is it Richard Tice? Or do you believe in reform? That's what you've got to ask yourself before you decide. Thank you very much. We got nearly 1,000 people watching this evening after 15 minutes. I can't believe it. It's, you know, this subject is really, really heavily trending online at the moment. Everybody's talking about it. I can't blame them. If you haven't done so already, please hit the thumbs up button on the feed. I very much appreciate it. And any new names that have come this evening, again, I appreciate seeing you. Please consider subscribing to the channel. I'm just a cabbie sitting in a garage, and we talk about this stuff all the time. Now, Rupert Lowe. Rupert Lowe is not a man to take all of this lying down. He's defended his position. He's been on X. He's been on social media channels, and he's been saying, you know, blah, 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 turn it from his point of view. He got in a little spat with Femi earlier. You remember that horrible lefty person who thinks he's a journalist? He basically implied or made an implication by the way he wrote it that Rupert is apparently a violent criminal. No, don't think so. You cocked that up completely. He wouldn't back down. And Rupert even said, you've got till midday to withdraw this or I'm going to sue you. And Femi wouldn't back down. Go and have a look at a video that Paz did and it will tell you all about it. Well, Rupert at the moment is out of reform. He's had the whip removed. Is the whip going to be restored anytime soon? Now, this little snippet I pulled from GB News earlier. Listen to this.
And it's a simple question, and I know you're good at answering questions, Mr. Tice. If he's exonerated, is he welcome back in reform?
Well, the whip has been withdrawn, and we want team players that will unite. I am actually. The whip has been withdrawn, and that should be the assumption.
The whip has been withdrawn. We want team players. In other words, you want yes men, people who will go, yes, we will do your bidding, we will do whatever you say. If you're not, if you don't, you're out and you're here. So by the sounds of that, Richard Tice is very much implying the whip isn't coming back anytime soon. Rupert, and he's made it publicly known, he said, come on, Nigel, let's sit down around the table. Let's go and have a bite to eat and a drink. Sort this out like gentlemen. That's the way we did things in the old days. What the hell went wrong? What the hell went wrong? Well, there's a statement, and I'll find it here. This is what Rupert put on his timeline. And what he's done, he's analysed what was said in Nigel Farage's statement he released and exactly, you know, what he implied, and he went over it and he broke it down and explained it. Now, I think it's very important to share this with everybody. This is the first part of it, but I'll read the rest to you. To try and avoid what happened yesterday, me jabbering on for 10 minutes and the feed cutting, I'm going to dictate it off my phone so I can keep an eye on things. So Rupert says, this is important. I want to break down the reform statement about me in full and show you how it is maliciously concocted to drag my name through the mud with zero credible evidence against me, all because I dared to pose a few reasonable questions of reform's leadership. It is with regret that we feel obligated to disclose that the party received complaints from 2 female employees about serious bullying in the offices of the Member of Parliament for Great Yarmouth, Rupert Lowe. That's the first paragraph that he wants to challenge. These allegations are not against me personally, but the office. Now, this is where we just, the way it was worded, it made it, or there was a strong implication it was Rupert. And if you read it a couple of times, you can see it actually wasn't. Both of these employees only raised their complaints once disciplinary proceedings had started against both of them for serious offences. They both admitted to these offences, no complaints whatsoever before. Parliamentary HR were involved in every step of the way, and full parliamentary process was followed. One of the individuals later dropped her appeal. They were parliamentary employees, not reform employees. So that's a key distinction right there, a key distinction. And it sounds like there wasn't any complaints at that time. Next thing, one worked in his parliamentary office, the other in his constituency office. We understand complaints have been made to parliamentary authorities. So that's the next little paragraph in this statement that was released. Rupert says, I have heard nothing from the parliamentary authorities. Again, HR have been fully supportive every step of the way. I have a huge amount of evidence to prove this. So he can back up everything he's saying. Next thing, evidence was provided to us of workplace bullying, the targeting of female staff who raised concerns, and evidence of derogatory and discriminatory remarks made about women, including reference to a perceived disability. Now, this is Rupert again. I did not make these remarks. The comments mentioned refer to a different member of staff's remarks, vindictively leaked in private WhatsApp messages by one of the individuals who was going through the disciplinary process. She resigned before that process can finish. Our MPs now responsible for mildly inappropriate comments that their staff make in private conversations. Reform has deliberately conflated these accusations to make me look guilty. Again, there is no credible evidence against me of any bullying whatsoever. And even the KC that they hired at great expense said that too. There is no evidence. We feel this is the next bit. We feel we have a duty of care to all our staff, whether employed directly or indirectly. Accordingly, we appointed an independent King's Counsel to conduct an investigation into the veracity of these complaints. To date, Mr. Lowe has yet to cooperate. And this is Rupert again. False. I've spoken with the KC at length on multiple occasions. I've asked for credible evidence against me. None has been provided. To say I have not cooperated is an outright lie, and my legal team are on this. Now, at the end of the day, he's a man with a lot of money, self-made, and he can afford to defend his reputation as that Femi idiot's going to find out to his cost. Now, one of the things about one of the so-called bullies, there was a comment on X which was very relevant. It said, I've known Rupert for 40 years, and this is rubbish. First I've heard of it, you know. And Ben Habib as well said, he's sound. Hell, I even know someone in Reform who speaks very highly of Rupert Lowe. So everything in the background tells me, and it's obvious to all and sundry, this is a hatchet job. In addition to these allegations of a disturbing pattern of behaviour, Mr. Lowe has on at least 2 occasions made threats of physical violence against our party chairman. Accordingly, this matter is with the police. Now, this is Rupert again. This is total nonsense. In December, Zia and I had a robust debate. We moved on, or so I thought. So they've obviously pulled that back out, haven't they? To, you know, do something with it. Do something with it. And I think it's going to go on. I really do think it's going to go on. Now, the last bit. Okay, so this was reported to the police the day after I raised concerns about the party's leadership. So again, it was concerns, it was constructive criticism. It wasn't an outright attack. And this was months after the event. What a disgraceful waste of police time, weaponising the process to blacken my name. Reform stands for the highest standards of conduct in public life. This is the article again. And we will apply these standards without fear nor favour, including within our own party. So we are clear. It's now reform policy to remove MPs if staff members make vexatious complaints, even whilst they're going through a disciplinary procedure following serious offences before any investigation is even allowed to start. Do they want to go down this path? Really? All of this and more is with my legal team. I will not tolerate falsehoods. It is a vindictive witch hunt, all because I asked awkward questions of Nigel Farage. So that, in its entirety, is Rupert Lowe and the statement he made. It's on his social media feed, so if you want to go and reread it, you can. And, you know, he's defended his position robustly. He's said he's got evidence. There are people that have jumped to his character and said this is rubbish. I know people who have told me what Rupert Lowe is like in the background, which leads anybody with half a brain to think it's rubbish. So what the hell is going on? The damage that this has done to the Reform Party, at least in the short term, is staggering because it leaves a very bad taste in everybody's mouth. And just to remind you of the intention here, listen once again to Richard Tice.
And it's a simple question, and I know you're good at answering questions, Mr. Tice. If he's exonerated, is he welcome back in reform?
Well, the whip has been withdrawn, and we want team players that will unite. I am actually. The whip has been withdrawn, and that should be the assumption.
The whip has been withdrawn. We want team players. That should be the assumption. Okay, I'm going to assume that you wanted him gone. I'm going to assume that you don't want him back. I'm going to assume he crossed the line because he dared to criticise. That's what I'm going to assume, and I'm sure everybody else is. You can't run a party, let alone a business like that, particularly when you're trying to win a general election, because people react to what they see in front of them. They don't react to something a few months down the line. We're all in a panic. We're all in a worry because we want our country back. We want things to change. You were the solution. You were the answer to everybody's prayers. And why have you just sat there and shafted us all? That's not me saying it. That's what a lot of people are going to be thinking right now. Now, to undo this, I think apologies need issuing publicly to at least 3 people that I can think of. Somebody needs to go, even if it's going to cost you a load of money. And Nigel and anybody else in that party need to steer it back in the direction that it once was. Something that the working class of this country who are lost can actually vote for. That's my 2 penny worth. 1,000, nearly 1,100 people watching this evening. Hello to everybody. Welcome to the chat, and I appreciate seeing you. If you haven't done so already, please give this a thumbs up, because I want this information everywhere, particularly the company's house info, so you can see clearly what's going on, and you can see whether he is sackable. You can see Rupert's statement. You can see what I think, and, you know, the video footage of Tice. It's a disaster. Is it recoverable? Probably is, if the right effort is put in, if the right ambition, the right way of managing this whole thing is put in. But it's one of a series of blunders over the course of months, isn't it? Which it could lead to a complete disaster if we're not careful. And then you get 5 more years of Starmer. Is that what everybody wants? We have 4 years, maybe 5 years tops, to another general election. What you've got to ask yourself, and that's very important, is that long enough for another party to come up? Is that long enough for another party to gain the ground that Reform has in the amount of time it has? And can they fix it? Or do we have to go with the, as Paul Thorpe puts it, the engine which we have? Do we need another driver? That's the question, isn't it? Right, folks, I've got a fair few of your comments, so let's just see what you've got to say. Enough of me talking. Lisa, the weft worm has to go along with RT, etc. Reform is saboteur. You said that quite rightly. And again, my star comments don't seem to be removing themselves. More technical bull. Michael, how many parties has Anderson and Farage been through? 3 each, really. Yeah, Lee Anderson, it was Labour. Conservatives and now Reform. Nigel Farage was a Tory, wasn't he? Then UKIP. Brexit Party, if you want to get pernickety about it, and now Reform. 4 by my count. Yeah. Tim, Nigel won't care because he'll form a coalition government with the Tories and the Uni Party will just stay in power as usual. One of the things that we've lost is straightforward, good old-fashioned conservatism. You know, Tory and Labour have melded into one party, haven't they? This is what's going on. This is the big issue. And you couldn't stick a fag paper in between the two of them. But is conservatism the answer, or is it just we need the whole thing flung out? It's that's the thing, isn't it? Aftermath 4774. Back in the day, Englishmen were willing to risk a spear in the guts to defend their country, only to have it given away because their descendants were afraid of being called racist. You're not wrong there. You know, my ambition, and I will probably never live to see this, I've said before, I identify as an Englishman. As far as I'm concerned, I was made in England, as the song goes. England is my home, and England is where I am. England happened to form part of the United Kingdom, which in itself is a political union, which all this lot keep harping on about. They've hijacked it with terms like Great Britain, United Kingdom. We're losing our national identity on a daily basis. It's wrong. You go back in our history, probably to the early 1700s, you'll see where all this started to go wrong, and it needs fixing. But that's wishful thinking on my part. We're here where we are right now. We need to work out how we're going to change it. Paul, Stephen Wolfe has finally come out today and says Nigel undermined people, including himself, others, Kilroy Silk, David Campbell, Banana Man, Douglas Carswell, Ben Habib, now Rupert Lowe. There is a list. Call it a casualty list. I don't know, but there certainly is a list. Nigel, evening all. If Reform goes kaput, are we all going to be fucked if Labour get in again? I think we are. You know, I spend a lot of time on X, and I spend a lot of time on a news aggregator service called Ground News, looking for stories and seeing what's going on. And it's the same bloody theme all over the place. I think we've got to stock up on corned beef, buy hard hats, and if we've got an outdoor swimming pool, turn it into a bomb shelter. That seems to be the way we're going. And we need to get out of this merry-go-round before we're all dead. Art with a pen. It's very sad to see what happened to Lowe, but I'm still voting Reform. Perfect example there. Art with a pen. You know, you're identifying a difference between the person and the party. And, you know, that's a decision people have got to come to in their own right, I think. The whole bullying accusation thing is very leftist behaviour. Truly gross. Comes across as that, doesn't it? It's the kind of thing you'd expect from other places. Very calculated. And as I've said, the timing sucks. Very much. Bluebell, Zia Yusuf went to a lefty college and became a centre-right. Very strange. Check out Tuesday's live he just did on Rupert being far right, as Reform have said. I saw Maya went live about 8 o'clock, and I intend to go and have a look at that once we've finished and, you know, see what he says. You know, anybody that goes against the grain is being labelled as far right. It's far wrong, really far wrong. You know, the rhetoric that we were given by Farage and Reform and everyone else when they were trying to get in seems to have quickly gone out the window once they're now in. They've softened their stance on so many things, whereas Rupert Lowe never did. So you've got to wonder, is that why he got shot off? I wonder. There's too many people in this country that still believe it. I think Farage is controlled, and that includes Trump. Stephen Wolf has come out with some comment, but I'm struggling to find anything other than he states that Nigel like control. That's nothing new on me, Mark. I have heard that a lot before. Munin the Raving, can politics work as a business when shareholders demand profits over democracy? Bloody well shouldn't, should it? But you wonder if it does. It's all power play. It's all big money, all big names. Is it correct to refer to leftism as a very bad mental illness? You know, years ago, when you mentioned somebody on the left, they were a Labour supporter, working person, employee rights, and all the rest of it. And then as time has dragged on, you get the far left have infiltrated that side, where you talk about 500 genders, race relations, DEI, and all the rest of it. It's a complete disaster. And people are very much absorbed in this. They believe it. And to challenge it otherwise, you are called something, ending with ist or ism or something or other, or just plain far right. And it's those people I really feel sorry for. Nicola Wright, people need to stop blaming Mohammed and start waking up to the fact Farage put him in his position to point the finger at the real culprit. Yeah, he's come along with money. And, you know, he's been put in a position he's been put in. Somebody put him there. You may have a point. But again, we don't know what goes on behind closed doors. Tad, billions to Ukraine for the next 100 years. This is one of the things right there. You know, 100 years of multi-million-pound giveaways to other countries. Not just that one. Other countries where our own people are suffering. That's why we've had enough. That's why people want reform. That's why people are hoping reform can fix all this for them. That's why people are disappointed with what's happened. Reform feels like controlled opposition to me. This is DBZ. Just a pressure release valve for the elites. I don't trust Farage. He has all the wrong policies. Maybe 10 years ago, maybe favourable, but not this late. Could be. Could be. I like all these comments because it gives people an opportunity to, well, sound off. It gives people an opportunity to say what they think, which is what it's all about. It's all kicked off after Rocket Man said Lowe was best man to run reform, and we know it too. Well, he didn't like to be usurped, did he? That's the thing. Dean Hall, wasn't it Farage that was asking for mass deportation? So what changed? Softened his stance on that, didn't he? Very much. And, you know, at the end of the day, and I've been pulled up on this myself, when you get undocumented people coming into this country, let's take the Channel, for example, with no idea who they are, where they've come from, and what their intentions are when they get here, let alone anything else. So there's a lot of unknowns there. And then they're granted asylum or they're in the system. They're free to walk around, and we don't know anything about them. Now, that to me, it brings concerns to me about the safety of my family, my children, my community, and I'm sure it does to everybody else. And just the sheer fact I've said that, I'm racist. Those are the only concerns that Rupert Lowe has, very well documented. And he's now being labelled as far right and right when his colleagues around him in his former party were agreeing with him to a point, and now they're stepping back from it. Why? What's changed? I used to think they were playing the long game, but I don't know. Bluebell, Andy, watch Tusi live. He just did about Rupert being too on the right and what he said about Zia. Yeah. This is, you know, it's criticising the management, isn't it? And off you pop. Russell B, only reform with Rupert Lowe as leader could lead to success, not wanky Nigel Farage, who was quite clearly jealous of Rupert's success, so had to make up ridiculous lies and boot him out. Now reform you know, Rupert Lowe is a very wealthy businessman who can afford to defend himself legally. If he goes down that route, what's going to happen? I don't know. I really don't know what's going to happen. But at the end of the day, it's fixable if they want it to be fixable. Do they want it to be fixable? Or are they after something else? Very disappointing. Hello, Factual Breakdown. Hope you're well. Wanting to have illegals leave is not about hate. It's about maintaining national identity and putting nationals first. I'll go further than that and say it's about unknown. Unknown. Who are they? Where have they come from? What do they want? You know, that's a massive problem that we've got. Matthew. Hello, Matthew. Has Richard Tice learned the full names of the two Scottish council defectors yet? Probably not. I mean, Jesus. You know, the thing that raises again is all the grassroots people all up and down the country. Again, they've had this idea of reform put in front of them, and they want to work hard to give our country some kind of reform and get in behind it. And then you get other people parachuted into positions and not the support they thought they would have. I've seen it with my own eyes. And you're literally fighting against thunder, you know, it's hard work. I went to a reform meeting fairly early on locally, just after the last general election, and there was no backup. They said they were doing it all themselves, and they worked bloody hard, all of them. And I was involved with some work with them over the weekend, and it's them I feel sorry for. It's all the grassroots people. Never mind the Rupert Lowes, the Nigels, the Lees, James, and anyone else that's in Parliament at the moment. It's all those unknowns that we don't know anything about that want to stick their hat in the ring, want to make a difference. What about them? And then you get hundreds, if not thousands, of people all over the country who still believe the system works the way it does. Wrong. We need people out. Scott, Trump gets elected, Rupert gets sacked. What does that tell you about this dying country? Well, it's pretty much on its arse, isn't it? Pretty much on its arse. But is there still hope? The Great Commission, if UK's king indeed converted, does that merit he must forfeit his kingship due to England to be a Christian? There was a post that I saw on X where they put in a very strong rebuttal about that and defended what he was doing and, you know, what he was up to. And it was a very, very strong rebuttal. I've not seen anything like that before. Scott, I always wondered why Lee A has been pretty quiet. All is being revealed. It's not like him to be very quiet, is it? If he's got something to say, he usually will. It's a great fanfare. Julie, did you know the same day it happened, there was a Reform members meeting, and when they informed them the whip had been removed, they walked out in protest? I did hear that. You know, this is how much of a kick in the nuts it's been, not only for Reform, but everybody else. Now that's Richie. Hello, mate. I hope you're well. But if we don't have Reform, what other credible alternative is there? I feel very politically homeless now. You know, if we're not careful, we're going to be right back there again, aren't we? I've been politically homeless for more years than I care to remember. And we've got to identify, is it the party, the vehicle that we can drive to victory, or is it the people within it? People come and go all the time. You know, Nigel said he's going to be there for 5 years. That's what he said. And then will he be gone? Then what happens? Who takes his place? What happens then? It's dynamic, but organisations remain. Can that organisation be steered from the inside in the direction it can be? It should be, to change this country. But we all know the rot goes a lot deeper than that. I don't mean with Reform. I mean with the establishment as a whole. We know who's really running the show, and it ain't bloody Keir Starmer, that's for sure. Gary, what a disaster this has turned out to be. It's like he just handed Starmer a second term, for fuck's sake. That's where I hope that people take stock of what's happened. As I said earlier in this stream, people are very reactionary, aren't they? They react to things like that. Oh, I'm not going to vote for them anymore. How dare they keep Rupert? You've got to see the bigger picture. You've got to look at everything that's gone on and think, can I still get behind them? At the end of the day, who else can come in and get to that as quickly as they can and move on? If you have children, are you prepared to risk your children's future by sabotaging something now, and then it's them that's got to clear up the mess? I'm certainly not. So let's just hope it can be sorted. Nigel must get Rupert back ASAP. Only 5 MPs. How the heck can he get rid of Rupert? Madness. Come on, Nigel, get your pride out of the day and get Rupert back now. I agree with that, Doris, but will it happen? I don't know. But 5 MPs, they can't afford to lose any. Phil, totally agree. The majority want change. The minority in the Westminster bubble know this, but nothing will change. The scary bit is, without change, we'll be stuck with a further 4 to 5 years of Labour. Yeah, I agree with you there. Or an alternative, the Tories, if they pull their socks up. But again, it's the establishment that we don't want, the establishment we don't need anymore. It needs to go. It needs to change. Blair and Cameron dragged their respective parties to the firm centre ground because they believe that battles can be won there. You know, the centre ground, in my view, you're not one way, you're not the other. You've got to have beliefs either way, haven't you? You've got to have beliefs either way. I call myself centre right, but I might be a little bit further that way than I care to admit. But, you know, just seems a good place, tolerable place to sit myself. Now that's Richie. It's a pity the Heritage Party have not become much bigger than they currently are. They've some excellent policies. A lot of these other parties have excellent policies. And wouldn't it be great if they could all get together into one big coalition and stick 2 fingers right up at the establishment? Is it ever going to happen? I think there's too many egos in the way. Matthew again. Hello. Spending a lot of time on X is entirely your problem. You're getting bombarded with drivel. Define drivel, Matthew. My drivel filter is on. I can recognise a lot of drivel. I recognise a lot of not so drivel. Wendy, why are English people so afraid to go out in our own cities? Why are we so afraid to fly our flag in public? Our country is no longer ours. Talking doesn't seem to have the quick enough effect that people think it does. Now, I'll just clarify, I'm not inciting anything, so don't believe I am. But if you went down that road and did stuff other than talking, wouldn't that give them the excuse they needed to clamp everybody down hard? And I mean hard. It's horrible when you don't feel in control. Jolly good. Better to know this now than get led down the garden path until the election. Yeah, absolutely. I have a very big worry in my head what could happen, and I hope I'm wrong. Tony, I would have hoped that Reform would kept this squabbling in the house. How can they think people will join them with all this turmoil going on? It's what destroyed the Tories. I mean, how many prime ministers did they get through in the last 10 years? It was a laughing stock in the end, a real laughing stock. And then you get that coordinated handover. Gary Barnes, Andy, wouldn't it have been more wise for Rupert to not have criticised Nigel in the newspaper? It's a really bad look. The worst thing for the Reform Party is to end up like the Tories. I don't think he should have criticised. He should have had a measure of what Nigel was like, or how Nigel would react more to the point. And maybe he shouldn't. But then if you read all the other stuff, he's had genuine concerns about how the party's run. And he's not the only one to have said this. And he's tried in private again and again and again and again. But when I read the article, I didn't see it as an attack. I didn't see it as criticism. I saw it as a constructive critique All right, it's a form of criticism, I grant you, but it was more of a constructive critique than anything else. Over 2,000 in the last 10 days have come across the channel. Yeah, I read that earlier, Richie, and like I said, who are they? Where have they come from? What are their intentions now they're here? Nobody can answer that, any of it. And you wonder why people are upset. Nick, why does the right always tear itself apart with this endless infighting in the public gaze? Good point, Nick. I mean, there's one thing that the lefties do quite well. They stick band together. They got the whole unity thing off to a T, haven't they? But us people on the right seem to, you know, pull ourselves in different directions. I mean, I try and take a bit of a measured, logical approach to everything and try and break it down and try and explain it and try and say, right, hang on, folks, let's think about this. And then you have other people that will fly off the handle, just like that, click of the fingers, and regret what they say later. You know, everybody in their own way, people on YouTube, you in your own family circles, the businesses you have, the people you work for, we all have influence over everybody we meet in our everyday life. And how you are influenced depends on how those people react. We all have some kind of responsibility to each other in a funny way. Didn't hear any more about the tattooed face that threatened Nigel. Was that staged? First I've heard of it, Sharon. I'm not sure that one. I must have missed it. John Knox, the left is desperate to split the right in both the US and the UK. They're attempting to attack Elon Musk, drive a wedge between him and Trump, and in the UK, desperate to stop Reform UK, hold the line up. Absolutely, John. You know, you can always tell when you're getting over the target because there's loads and loads of negativity. It's post after post after post after post. I get attacked. Other right-leaning YouTubers get attacked. Politicians get attacked. It's a daily thing. And a lot of it's bots, a lot of it's crap. But the problem is it's so powerful and so overwhelming. Many believe it. You know, there's an individual or two online that spread a load of crap around about me. And I don't pay them heed because I just put them under the same category as all the rest. Nonsense. Complete and utter nonsense. Not worthy of anyone's time. And it happens every day. And that's how you know you're over the target. Donald Trump won Pirates Never Die in Holland. Government advised first few months back to get some cash in the house for a couple of weeks. Last week, they advised to get enough survival in-house groceries for at least 3 days. This is not. Yeah, I know where that paper comes from. I know what area that's getting steered down, definitely. Sheila Garthwaite, the most important thing is to get Starmer out. Absolutely. Well, the entire bleeding government, they're a disaster. Do you do that democratically or what? Space Bandit, my God, what with people climbing Big Ben and yo-yo politics going on? Am I living in a dream nightmare? I'll tell you what, that was a joke. If that was the White House, if they'd have jumped over the fence at the White House and run at the place, it wouldn't have lasted 30 seconds. And we have some joker up the side of the Elizabeth Tower for, well, hours. Now, at the end of the day, they weaponise the response to the emergency services, don't they? They all come out, shut the roads, sit there for hours, try and talk them down nicely. Causes chaos, doesn't it? Absolute chaos. Hello, Russ. Hope you're well. Last week, I paid £25 membership and joined Reform. Yesterday, I requested a refund. There you go. Many people are going to be doing it. And there's a comment from Russ. And I think there was something like 1,500 in 24 hours is a report I read. How accurate that is, I'm not sure. I've said this before. All the smaller centre-right parties need to get together. Too many conflicting ideas, though. Too many egos. But I agree with you, 120%. That's why reform is seen as the only hope. I'll support reform as no one person is bigger than the country. Play the hand you have until you're dealt a better hand. Yeah, you got to do it, haven't you, Kevin? Got to do it. Jeannie, I don't think people will be dishing the party in droves. Most people had never heard of Rupert Lowe. I knew who Rupert Lowe was before he got into politics. And I knew, like what he did in football and all the rest of it. I knew he was a businessman. But you're right, a lot of people probably hadn't heard of him and probably still haven't if they're not engaged in the political situation. They'll know who he is now because he's all over the damn news. Morgan, putting our heads in the sand got us here. And that's important. We can't put our heads in the sand and hope it's going to go away. It needs dealing with. It needs talking about. It needs bringing to the floor. Ask your audience to vote. All right, I will. Okay. If you, in spite of everything that's happened over the last 48 hours, intend to still vote for reform, give me a 1 in the chat. If all of this has put you off and you won't vote reform, give me a 2. So voting reform is a 1, not voting reform is a 2. Let's see what we got. Little bit of a mixed bag there. So, opinions are very split on this. Opinions are very split. And the other thing as well, people were pissed off with Farage and getting more 2s coming in now. So you can see the effect that this has had. Somebody with a question mark. I'm assuming you're not sure which way you're going to turn. 1664. Cheers, blood. 1, but I refuse to give them my money while they act in this way, Russ says. There you go. So, you can see the bigger picture there, but, there's a problem. Now, somebody else put it in another way. If Farage left, would you still vote reform? And thousands said yes. So, there still is the intention there to vote reform. Somebody just put the latest polls up. Let's see if I can get that. Poll from before the row. Reform 182, Labour 176, Tories 129, Lib Dem 78, SNP 44, Green 5. Good luck with anyone else besides reform. Absolutely. And let's hope after the row that poll isn't very too far removed. Hardly any difference between the two. It can't damage things. It can't. Paul Thorpe did this and it was 93% on Rupert Lowe's side. I did see that poll. I voted on that myself. And, I figured he'd get thousands. He gets some very good engagement. There's Paul, very good engagement. And when we're finished here, I'm going to go and hop across and watch what's going on there. And I suggest people do the same if he's still live. Well, everybody, thank you very much. As always, really, really good live stream tonight. Nearly 1,100 people watching at its peak and lots of engagement. This subject is going like wildfire. Everybody's talking about it, and rightly so. It's the future of our country. It is the future of our country, and it needs to be right. It needs to be correct. We've discussed tonight what we feel, what we think should happen, whether it does, where we think it's going to go. We've had a look at the makeup of the Reform Limited Company and who has and hasn't significant control. Therefore, in my opinion, answering whether it would be easy to get shot at Zia Yusuf or not, and where the name in hell we're going. But some very good people have fallen by the wayside, and it's wrong. It's wrong. Before I depart, if I can just remind people, just to give it a thumbs up, Appreciate that because it helps us go around everywhere. If you haven't and you're a new viewer, I would really appreciate if you consider subscribing as well. That's free to do. Appreciate that very much. There'll be more content out during the week, as there always is. We'll probably come back to this subject a few times, I bet. And as always, I look forward to talking to you soon. Toodaloo.